Okay, so we are now recording.
Well, I can start with chapter 18 and some insights I saw or that I had was there was a professor last semester who came to visit BYU Idaho, and he was from Gonzaga University, and he was in their graduate program. He was also a marriage and family therapist, and I asked him a question about being like a family life educator, and he had no idea what that was, which really surprised me. And so, like, my biggest insight for like improving the practice of family life education was just we just like they need to get out there and just be more involved, or I don't know, just somehow we need to like show society the need for family life educators, that we need to prevent problems from happening rather than rehabilitating the problems that have already happened. So that was my insight from chapter 18.
So I kind of noticed the same thing. Well, I didn't talk to the professor, but I had never heard of a family life educator either until this major, and it wasn't even until later in the major, I guess, that I actually kind of learned about it. So I don't think they're very popular, and I do think that we need to find a way to be able to let society know that, like, hey, these educators are actually a good benefit, and we should use them more. It can and show, I guess, society the real benefits of what the family life educators can do.
Well, that's my thing is I think it's kind of a catch-22, right? Because we need to inform people why they're needed, but at the same time, there's not a lot out there. So it's like, what do you do first? Do you try to become a family life educator? And I just don't know how to get started in that format.
I also think it's kind of hard for people who don't even know, like, what's the difference between getting educated and being counseled sometimes. So you have to, like, clearly define the difference.
How would you? But I think that's true. I think there's a big definition, or I think people think, oh well, if I go to that, then I'm gonna be like paying for like a counselor kind of a thing. So how would you like make that define like that definite line between a family life educator and a counselor? What do you think? Anybody? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would be challenging for people to understand that there is a difference, if they don't really know what a family life educator is. Last semester, I interviewed a guy that works at a not-for-profit organization in my town, and it seemed like to me all of the not-for-profit organizations that are in this area they have like therapists involved or social workers. So it's like there's not really an area for family life educators to go in there, at least how it's structured now. So I thought that was interesting as I started learning about this. I was like, where would they actually fit in these already organized places that we already have?
I think there's a negative connotation to it too, just because like there's court-ordered, parenting classes and anger management classes and things like that. So it's like if you have to take classes to be a parent, then you're assumed a bad parent, but it's not that way at all. It's just general. But how do you get that message to the public?
Yeah.
And I think
true.
like there could be a place for it, maybe like within the school system. A school counselor maybe sees a child, acting out or having issues at home, and maybe even having a family life educator like within the school system that could go to their home, or could they could meet at the school and just kind of educate them on some ways to help with like their child or their teenager to cope better with their divorce or any issues that are going on within the family. I think that could be a place, but I'm not really sure. I guess I don't know enough yet, but that's what I was thinking could be one place to have a family life educator.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it is. I don't know, how would they get into the schools? Because I feel like, I know a lot of schools have like counseling already, or like a speech therapist and different things like that. I know at least in my middle school they had stuff like that, and but I don't know how would you, like Michelle was saying, how do you get those people in there, you know? Because otherwise it's going to be like a social worker or something like that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a friend that is a school counselor, and she's talked to me a little bit how she had to like work one-on-one with the family. So again, like that's kind of hard. How can you separate the idea of education and counseling? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe they just approach it in a different way.
I think one way, I don't know, I feel like education would be more of a preventive step, whereas counseling is going to be something to almost fix it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I don't know
Yeah.
how did you get that across, you know, like, no, you know, this is a preventive measure. And some people don't want, they don't care. It's like, well, I don't have the problem right now, so I don't want to deal with it. I'll, you know, do that when it, cross that bridge when it comes.
Yeah.
I think that they could work together too. Like I think counseling and family life education is different. So the 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 family could go see a counselor and then they could also go get education, you know, and I think they would be different and I think they would realize the difference of that, but at the same time it's hard for people to understand the difference at first if they don't, you know, if they're not open to it.
Yeah. That reminds me of just like, I don't know if you guys have heard of WIC. Because I have a little boy. But anyways, when you're on it, you have to go and you have to watch like different videos about taking care of a baby and nursing and all the benefits of it. And it's good because it teaches a lot of things, and you're like required to do it. But I don't know if there would be a way to like, if you have a kid in elementary school, like you could, not required, but like offer these classes, you know, like through a school, like make it like, hey, you know, we have these classes on behavior with a kid or whatever it would be.
Mm.
But I don't know, I just try to think like with WIC, I know you have to go to it, and so a lot of people go, but then they end up learning a lot of things that they didn't know before. And that, I mean, that would be something that kind of like a family life educator could do. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I looked at the definition for counseling, and it specifically talked about like psychological problems, and so maybe that could be also a defining difference, is that counseling deals with more like psychological issues, whereas a family life educator just educates them, gives them principles, and then they learn to apply it to their own lives and their own situations.
It's so hard. Like, I'm really trying to think of how we could integrate it. The only thing I can come up with is we have to kind of push ourselves out there and, like, well, I don't know, maybe try to give free classes or some. I just don't know how to integrate it because you can't make it a mandatory thing. I think that's too personal, and I don't know. I just don't think people would respond well to that. But offering it for free, I can see a lot of parents saying, well, I'm busy. I don't have time to go do this. So I don't know.
I can find that happy medium. If it's not, I mean, I wouldn't want to make it mandatory either. But then it's like, well, I don't have time to do it either. You know, I don't know. It's hard.
Well, that's how like the other chapter it talks about how you have to target your audience and to figure out ways to appeal them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think every community is going to be different too. I mean, just because the people in every community are different. Like, I think it'd be easy to go if, like, for one of my classes when I was in Rexburg, I had to teach some parenting classes, and it was easier to find people because everybody there was having young new kids, and they're like, oh, you know, they're students, and they're like, oh, this is free, and maybe I could learn something about how to take care of my child, or different things. But different communities are going to be harder.
Hmm. Yeah, and that also reminds me, like, how do you reach the people that actually need it the most? Like the low-income families that are struggling with multiple stressors in their lives. How are you going to get them interested in the program that you have for them? I think that would be a huge challenge.
I also think you yourself have to be interested in the topic you're sharing, because if you don't have a passion for it, they're gonna see that you don't really care,
Yeah.
and you're offering advice.
Yeah, that's true. Is that first chapter?
Yeah. I think the next chapter was chapter 2, Designing Comprehensive Family Life Education Prevention Programs. Does anyone have any thoughts that they would like to share on that chapter?
So kind of when I read over this, I was like, okay, we're kind of putting together our own family life education program.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, how are we going to, I guess, like some of the stages, those like pilot testing and stuff like that. And I'm like, I was trying to think of like, okay, how could we do that with us teaching, like for this class, without, I don't know, it kind of seemed hard because it's like, okay, we're only going to be with these people 2-3 times, and it's like, is that really enough time is like a pilot testing, and then would our second person be considered like the advanced testing of the program? I don't know. I was trying to like think of how I could use those principles in like our actual teaching experiences for the class.
I think the thing I liked the most about the chapter that I highlighted was it says the most effective FLE programs simultaneously and proactively work to reduce risks while increasing protection. So, I mean, we have a big job to do that. I mean, that's going to be hard, but I think as long as we really focus on it and do our research and find, and apply our research to our actual audience that we have, I think it could be very successful. I think just the trick is finding the right research and doing the work, putting in the work to actually make sure that it is applicable to who you're speaking to. And then I think that also would help you have a successful program, because if people feel like it's beneficial, they might talk to other people about it, and that can help you, find a bigger audience.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point with the research too, because you don't have research that's applicable. I mean, if I'm going to go teach a class, I'm already going in there with one hand behind my back because I don't have children of my own. I only know what we've learned in our major. So you have to have convincing enough research for them to even believe you in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also important when you have a new program to get feedback from the people that were actually there. What did they like? What didn't they like? Did they want more involvement? Did they want, like what did they really want to learn? So as you're building that program, you can really see what you need to research more on, or maybe having more time for group discussions or anything like that. So that way it really is applicable to the people that you're trying to target.
Mm-hmm.
But even when we're choosing the family relations people, when I was looking for someone that I could relate to a little more than someone that's like farther ahead, because I don't know if I could teach them something I don't really have experience with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like some of the people that we're gonna get are gonna have like a few kids, or I mean, gone through the situation for a while, or whatever the topic is. But I don't know. I feel like there's always gonna be a certain, like, we're not gonna feel adequate, I think, to everything, because we're not gonna have experience with everything. I mean, that'd be crazy if we're experiencing all the different problems that everybody has. So I think that's where it comes down to research too, is just like finding good studies and good research to be able to teach them.
You also
Yeah.
have to be confident in what the research found, or they're not gonna not necessarily believe you, but they're not gonna feel like you understand what you're talking about. So why would they listen to you?
Mm-hmm. I think part of that is like as we're going through and finding our research, we have to make sure that we keep in mind that they have experience. Like the chapter, I don't know if it was this chapter, but one of them said that you have to remember that they already have experience from being in that position. So we have to also take that into account too.
You guys think, because I was thinking about taking it from the perspective of, I don't know, it's just my biggest fear that I'm going to try something and try to be a family life educator and someone's going to call me out and say, you don't know what you're talking about. So do you think it's effective to say, you know what, you're right, I don't have children. However, I do remember being a teenager and a child, and I can offer you the perspective of your child and your teen, so that when you're telling them something or we're discussing a method, I can help you understand what they're thinking and why they're not internalizing it. Do you think that would be effective, or do you think they would kind of just laugh that off?
I think it would be effective. I don't know. It's like, well, yeah, even if you have kids, like, I'm not going to relate to somebody who has a parent of a teenager, So it's like, but I remember back when I was a teenager, and this is how I felt, and then just kind of using, I don't know, research too there of, like, this may not necessarily be exactly what your child is thinking, but this is what research says the majority of it is, or I don't know, something like that.
And I think it's important to focus on research, but also focus on like the principles of like the parenting styles or how the child is acting, and not focusing on the application, because everyone's going to apply principles very differently to their own families, and just really, like letting them know that it's research, that that's what you're talking about. It's not your own personal experience or lack of experience. You're focusing on the research and the principles that have been tested and retested and that work well for that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's it for chapter 2, unless anyone else has anything to say.
Nope.
Okay. Then do you want to go to chapter 16? I think that was the next chapter we were supposed to read, about marketing family life education.
Yeah, why not? So something that stood out to me was just like how, I mean, and we kind of touched on it before, just how much that really family life education is kind of suffering because we don't have a lot of participation in it. so when I was trying to think of this, it's like, because I'm like, okay, we got to find somebody to teach too. I'm like, okay, how can I try and use these things to find somebody to teach? And I'm like, okay, I know I could find I could ask somebody to do it, but if they really don't want to do it, they're not going to commit to it, and then they're not going to um, actually show up for things or anything. So I'm like, okay, how do I try and figure out who we can teach? So just some of the little things in there I thought were interesting of just like, I don't know. I think for me, I think it'd be easier. I didn't want to do it, but the other, like having a workshop, but in person is almost better than I think than online. I don't know. I see a lot more benefits of having it in person. Um, but then again, there's cons to it too. But just like how the place is kind of really important. Um, one thing that I thought was interesting was like the security aspects of it. So I was trying to relate that to being online, and I was like, okay, how can I make my atmosphere feel like it's a safe atmosphere for the people I'm teaching instead of just having, I don't know, like how do you create that atmosphere online?
Mm-hmm.
Having that safe place.
It probably has more to do about like how you approach it, like how you speak to them, than it does the actual environment that they're in. Because they're probably going to do it at their home or at their work or somewhere like that. But I think we have to make them feel comfortable with how we approach them as a teacher, and make sure that they feel comfortable asking us questions or discussing these topics with us.
Yeah, I think we also need to like show confidence in what we're talking about and be excited, like Lauren was saying, and just I think if we're confident in what we're talking about and we're not like being like, wait, is that right? Like I think that's what the research said, then that instills more confidence in us as the educators. If we don't do that, that will instill more confidence in us, and then hopefully they would feel more comfortable sharing things with us so we can help them out.
I think one thing too that just reminds me of like I think confidence is a huge thing, but I think also having the ability to like if they ask a question and say, hey, instead of giving it like making something up and just like this is what it is or whatever, just saying, hey, like what, I don't have that answer right now, but let me go research it and find it and I'll get that for you. I think that to them shows them like I'm not going to claim that I'm all knowledgeable about everything. I won't know everything about it, and I'm going to teach you the best to my ability, that the research that I found and everything, but there are some things I won't know, but I will do my best to try and find those answers too. I think that will help them have just more confidence in us and saying, oh, they really do want to help me and they really do care about, my situation.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, even in the chapter, it talks about how it's good. Sorry, it's good
You're good.
to partner up with different companies, but even just us as partners in the class, I feel like will just benefit more because you're having 2 points of view of how you're educating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
I almost think, we have obvious disadvantages being online, but we have a lot of advantages too. I think as long as we have that, quiet environment and, we're kind of dressed maybe a little bit more professional so they take us seriously. But then we can look away from our screens. Like I have a split screen up right now and I can look at the research exactly when I'm talking to them and, look at an outline, and we have references, whereas in person, it probably would look really unprofessional to be looking at note cards all the time or reading off a PowerPoint.
That's true.
Right.
I liked the part in the chapter where it talks about the crafting crafting marketing messages to foster change, and I just kind of wanted, I don't know, when I teach, I kind of wanted to implement some of those. So, because I feel like if I want to teach them, but I actually want to help them and change, not just like, oh, here's the information, do what you want to do with it, but like encourage them and, I don't know if challenge is the right word, but kind of like give them that little push to like actually start changing whatever it is in their lives. But so I like some of those things in there. That was a good part of the chapter for me.
Okay, does anyone else have anything to share from chapter 16? Okay. And then chapter 1, we just read about the different approaches and some of the how we view families. And I thought it was interesting for the different approaches, the expert approach, and then I forgot what the other approach was. But it was almost like when like a teacher is in charge in a classroom versus when the students are more in charge in the classroom. And I feel like both have like their benefits, but I think when you can like mix both of them together, where the teacher maybe, or like us as the family life educator, would give some information and have like class discussions or like a question and answer or things like that to really, I think, use like the strengths of both of those approaches could be beneficial. But I guess it depends on your target audience and what they would want.
Yeah, that's the you're talking about the expert and the facilitator.
Yeah, that
or the collaborator approach.
Yeah.
That's what I know. When I went through there, I was like, okay, I think I'll probably end up using some of this approach, a little bit of this approach. I don't know. I kind of found that just like a mixture of some of them would be better than having just one set approach. Because I know that, like, I think we're planning on more like of a I don't like to sit there and like lecture. I don't know. So like just having more of an open discussion.
Yeah.
Is something that I don't know that I kind of want to use. So I know that approach. Was it the facilitator approach? Yeah.
Because
and then I also like.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh. I also liked the critical inquirer approach too, where just like I think that using questions would be a good thing. I don't know, maybe I'm cheesy. I like to use object lessons if all possible for things to try and, I don't know, just I like to learn when I see something and I can like relate it to something else and I'm like, oh yeah, and it just helps me process and then remember it.
Mm-hmm.
What were you gonna say though, Lauren?
I can't remember exactly what I was going to say now, but I do know as I was reading it, when I saw expert and facilitator, I was like, oh, I wish I would like to combine those. And then later you could see it said collaborator, which is both of them. I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. But I like how you said you want to incorporate all of them because because one could have a benefit over the other. So it could help broaden the teaching.
I think it would be hard depending on the group that you have, especially if you happen to get a group of people from the same community, because they're not going to want to talk about their children or their personal lives. I don't know, what do you guys think for that? Because I just think it might be hard to to ask them questions and to get them to talk about things that they might feel really guarded about.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I
this
think
has to do
not
with.
asking specific. I don't know.
Well, you also have to remember, like, how understand your target audience. Like, do you expect them to answer or you don't? Or do you think they'll learn this way better or the other?
Mm-hmm.
I think too, using questions that not necessarily have to be answered out loud. Just questions that can really make you think about things. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I know that sometimes those questions are more beneficial when they can sit there and like, I don't know, we did it one time and you ask them a question and you can like have them write down their answers, and so you never see them, but then they actually like think about these things, and then it's like, oh wow, I don't know, it kind of hits them a little bit differently too, depending on the group.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of something I learned in one of my speech classes. Like, when you give a speech, you want to find some way to connect with the audience. Like, you have to tell them, something that they feel that connects them to the information that you're telling them. So instead of just spitting out all of this research, you have to find, a unique way that makes them feel like they're connecting to what you actually are educating them about.
Yeah, you just can't throw like, oh, here's all this research, now try and figure out yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important when you're in a group, you want it to be open so people can share information in their personal stories, and just trying to like have an atmosphere of respect and telling people, people are going to be sharing personal stories, please have respect for them, and we don't talk about it outside of this room or something like that. So that way there's hopefully an atmosphere of respect in your meetings.
That's true. I like that idea of kind of like, I don't know, it creates a sense of privacy with them too, so I feel like they're more open to like, it's not going to leave this room. What we talk about is
Yeah.
But then you gotta be careful to walk the fine line. I know, especially in this class, not getting too personal and not turning into a counseling session. So I was just reading through my notes again. There was one thing that I really liked, and I want to try and use it. Well, just keep it in mind. It says, believe that education for family life goes beyond simply learning for knowing, but extends to learning for living. And so I think when I'm working on lessons and stuff, I really want to like keep that little statement in my mind. Like, this is something that I don't want them to just know, but it's something that can actually benefit and change their lives. And that was one of my favorite little statements.
Yeah.
You also, I don't, it is in chapter 1, but it was like the first part where it talks about how you need to help people help themselves, because they're not going to, if you're just helping them, you're not helping them act upon it. So it's important for them to actually apply what they're learning.
Yeah. It's like that analogy with the fish. You don't just give a man a fish. Instead, you teach him how to fish. Then he won't go hungry for the rest of his life. Or whatever. I don't know the exact wording.
I have a question for you guys. Okay, what are your plans like? Let's assume that we all are going to go on to be family life educators. How do you guys plan on accessing the material and the research that we need to teach?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. I guess it depends. Like, maybe if where you're working, you could talk to them about having access to, I know there's like certain like research sites that you have to pay to be a part of, and maybe talking to your employer about paying for that or something. Other than that, I'm not really sure how to access research. Google.
I know there are websites that you can do that with. I mean, like how our school has like through the library online or whatever, you can get the journals and stuff. I know that in one of my classes I learned that there was, I don't know what the names of them are, but that are there for like people who do the research. And I mean, they're more scholarly, but they do cost money to get into.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, because I kept some of the textbooks for my other classes, which are great, but I worry that I'll be presenting the information or something and it'll be completely outdated and proven wrong. So I'm just nervous because I don't know how to stay up to date on things like that.
That's where I think one of those databases is probably going to be the best. I don't know, thing. And I think depending on what it is, because like they're always coming out with new research, but then like if you think about like parenting styles, the parenting styles have kind of stayed, at least what they are and everything have kind of stayed the same for a while. So I know like we had, in one of my classes we had to teach, the teacher had like given us a list of books. And so I kept it somewhere in my notes of just like good books that you can use for, but it was all like parenting style books, and so it wasn't, I guess, a broader horizon of different things.
There's also the NCFR. You know, they kind of recommend you joining it, and it kind of keeps up to date with everything.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything else you guys want to talk about for chapter 1?
I don't think so.
Okay. And then Appendix A just talked about principles and trying to help motivate people. I really liked like trying to think of like my own principles to use, like when I'm a family life educator and working with other family life educators. And I think the one principle that really stuck out to me was just like respecting those that we're teaching and respecting the family life educators that we're working with, you know, their level of knowledge and your audience's decisions throughout their life, and not judging them, but making sure that they don't feel or that they feel respect from you as a family life educator, that you're on like the same level, that you as a family life educator don't make them feel like you're above them or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of liked the principle of integrity and discovery together, just because it'll help us, or help me understand like the difference between what's right and wrong. But when you use discovery, it can help humble us to know that we don't know everything, and we haven't experienced everything, and it's okay to let others share what they've learned. And even growing up, one of my best friends went through like a totally different experience, but I've learned like how she dealt with it, and she learned from it. So I think it's okay to let other people express.
That's true. Some of the best lessons can be learned through other people's experiences.
I think that'll be pretty easy for us to accomplish, just because when we go into it, we're not going to have a lot of experience, so it'll be really beneficial for us to be learning from the people that we're trying to teach.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if they're going to expect us to know everything, you know, like think about when you have a teacher, you don't go in there and think that they know everything that you've been through. I mean, and you still listen to them. So I don't know that they'll have that perspective. Maybe some people will, but I think that as long as we, you know, do what we can to be educated on what we're teaching, then if they see that we've put that effort in, then they'll probably think that we're, you know, prepared and ready to teach without expecting us to be all knowing on everything.
I think you're right, Morgan. I don't think they're going to expect us to be experts on all the little, on everything.
Yeah,
And
I
they'll understand. Go ahead, Michelle. Was that you? Sorry.
Yeah, I just think too it depends on the age groups that we're teaching, right? Because like the generational gaps, I don't know. I'm very pessimistic. I'm scared because I look at someone like my dad, and sweetest man on earth, but he's the parent, I'm the child, right? He doesn't want to hear what I have to say because he knows better. And so I think, I don't know, I just don't know how to approach people like that. I think if we're teaching people who are in their early 30s and younger, they might be more perceptive to hear what we have to say. But I don't know. But I feel like you guys are pretty I think this might just be my own personal fear.
No,
I don't know.
I get what you're saying though. Like, I think there could be some people like that, and that's the challenge that we have is to make sure that we can help them be open to learning. Because if they're not open to learning and listening, they're not going to learn anything. So that's also something I think we have to concentrate on.
I think just the older generation, they already feel like they're set in their ways and they don't want anything to change. And like just the traditional family is not even really a common family anymore, so it's like hard for them to accept things like that.
Yeah.
That's true.
I guess I'm kind of hoping that since people are actually like signing up for it and it's not something that's being forced on them, that they're going to be open-minded because they want to learn about things. And so I'm hoping that they're just not going to be stuck in, that they're going to have that open mind and not be stuck in their ways and trying to, you know, this is how things are when I was alive, and you know,
When I was
not alive. When I was young, they're dead now. No, but
no, that makes sense.
I'm just hoping that we have, I guess, good open-minded things because they're signing up and they want to learn. So
Yeah.
I had a question for you guys. She asked like the reflection questions on how to motivate people, and I have no idea how to motivate people. I have a hard time motivating myself, and so I have no idea how to motivate people. So I was wondering what you guys' thoughts were on that.
I think one thing that I thought of that I kind of want to do is, like, I know that if you're excited about something too, and if you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to try this in my life too, or if you have tried it and it works really well, I think that gives them a little bit more motivation to try. But then, I don't know, I kind of love it when people will give me a challenge, you know, challenge you just for the next week to try this, or whatever it is. I think, like, that's me. I like when people do that to me, so that's something that I kind of want to try and see. I mean, everybody's going to be different, so it's kind of hard. But that was just what I was thinking. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
This might sound a little bit terrible, but just bear with me. What if we used kind of a fear tactic, but in a good way? Like, because we want to motivate them to take what we're saying seriously. So what if we were able to provide them with research that shows what could potentially happen with their children in the future if they're brought up not wrong, but I don't know, just Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah, like in the way that you're parenting them now, this is a potential outcome of the parenting style or whatever.
right, and just let them know these are the possibilities. What
Yeah.
what they choose to do is obviously their right, whatever but at least give them research backing like each different style and what could potentially happen. So you're
Yeah.
kind of giving them that, fire under them. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I think it's a tricky line.
Yeah,
I think
I have
that's a good beneficial line though. Like if I'm doing something wrong with my son, shoot, I would want somebody to tell me like, hey, with that, these are potential risks with it, and then at least I know. Oh, okay. I might have not known those risks before, and so I'm gonna change, or I'm gonna be stubborn, and you know what? I'm gonna do what I want to do. But I think it could definitely be beneficial. I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, and they might react in like they might be a little prideful and think that, well, what do you know? You're not a mom, you don't know my son or whatever. But I also think that people know when they're doing things the wrong way. And so it might take them time to realize that they need to apply that information, but I think if they're honestly like looking for a solution to their problem, then they will come around eventually.
No, at least try and give it a try if they really want to change.
Hmm.
I also think it depends like on the I don't know. I have a sister-in-law like that does everything we're learning the wrong way. She could benefit so much from our major, but I feel like if they're like so stuck into what they want to do that it's hard for them to get out of it. So I think sometimes maybe it like um, Michelle said that a scare tactic could be good, and it just depends on the level, I guess. Give it because
Yeah.
sometimes it's not enough, and then sometimes it's too much.
So
Yeah.
that made me wonder. Like, so what if you have somebody who doesn't think like a parenting style or whatever, they're not doing anything wrong, and they don't see themselves doing that. Like you can see from the outside them doing whatever it is, but they don't see themselves doing that. What would be a good way to make them realize, like, hey, actually, you are doing this, instead of just, I don't know. Because some people don't see themselves like, oh, I don't do that, but really you do. They don't, I
Mhm.
mean, how do you make them realize that? I don't know.
Maybe you could paint it as, okay, if you're getting this kind of reaction from your child, or maybe, don't be specific about it, but say, if a child is acting in a general way, they have certain behaviors, it's usually caused by this kind of parenting. And then maybe they could say, oh, my child's acting like that. I didn't think I did that, but maybe I do. I don't know if that
Yeah.
would help.
Like, I know some people where it's just like, my child is an angel and nothing is wrong with them, but really the child is like out of control, and it's just like, okay, you throw tantrums all the time, and it's just like, how as a parent, I understand you want to see the best in your child, but there comes a point where it's just like, okay, how do you make them realize that no, your child is acting out, for these different reasons or whatever, um, without offending them, or I don't know.
I think that also comes back to like the definition between a family life educator and like a therapist. Like we can give them education and we can teach them like what research shows works best, but if they're not going to accept it, then I don't think we can go much further because we can't like delve into their lives and tell them to do things differently and then report back because that's kind of getting into what therapists would do. So I don't know. It's kind of I guess depends on what situations come up, and you have to use our best judgment on how to handle it.
That's true. Are we allowed, I don't know, are we allowed to say like, oh, if I was in that situation, this is what I would do? No, or is that too close to the line? Do you know what I mean? Like, because I know people do it. But I don't know. When you go somewhere, they're not. Where was that the other day? They're not technically, if they're at work, they're not allowed to like give you a reference to something or a doctor or whatever. But it's just like, well, I use this person, or this is who I would choose, but that's my personal opinion, and that's not me. I don't know. Maybe that's too close to the line. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think as long as you have that disclaimer, and because I would be scared of them coming back with a lawsuit or something saying you gave me this information, it didn't work, and now our relationship is ruined.
Yeah.
I worked at a law firm for a little bit, so like that would just scare me. But I think it's Shay, it's what you're saying, that as long as you're saying, you know, I can't tell you what to do. I can't say that this will work. However, in my own life or something, like paint it, I don't know, be as vague as possible, you know?
Yeah, and if it gets to the point where it's kind of like on the line, maybe just say, you know, I can't give that information, or just saying you're not allowed to. I don't know. Just so that way you don't potentially have a lawsuit or something.
I don't want any of that.
Yeah, I was a massage therapist, and we learned about like how you cannot go out of your scope of practice, so you couldn't even like recommend, hey, you need to you should take magnesium or like vitamins or whatever. You can't recommend something to help improve them because that's out of your range. So you can like offer like, I don't know, like a suggestion, but you can't really say, hey, you have to take this or something like that.
Yeah.
That's so hard. Like, it's just so hard to be vague in situations like that when you want to help and you want to give them the right information, but kind of have to just push back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So was that everything? Did we cover everything, or am I?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So does anybody have anything else to add, or are we good to go?
I think we're good to go. I don't have anything to add.
I don't either.
Sound good.
So from what I understand, we just have to post this link, and then we all have to, I mean, submit our own outlines. So
Yeah.
that's right?
I think so.
Okay. And then we'll